Hello again and welcome to this episode of the G-Spot. My name's Gila Zak and I'm a certified hypnotherapist, and this is the place where we talk about all kinds of cool things related to unconscious motivations and behaviors. We're going to continue our series on emotional and physical sexuality and how this influences our intimate partner relationships. And in the last episode, we talked about the 4 core traits that kind of imprint who we are in the world. Are we an emotional or are we a physical? And today we're going to kind of go and we're going to expand that out a little bit, because one of the core features of EMP theory, according to Dr. John Kappas, is that who we're in a relationship with is going to mostly influence whether our dominant or subdominant traits are expressed. Now, you might have watched the last episode and thought, well, okay, she's talking about the extremes, right? Because this theory needs to be explained on the extreme behaviors of either side, so that way you can see where you are on the continuum. But what we're going to get into next are called surface traits. These are the things that you're most likely to observe in people and see how they might be you or your intimate partner, or maybe even someone you know. So surface traits are fluid. They kind of come and they go. They're how we express ourselves in certain situations, but they are not a direct expression of whether or not we are an emotional, physical, sexual. We're just more likely to experience these behaviors if we are one. The other thing I want you to keep in mind as I go over these traits is that we can't use them to determine whether or not someone is an emotional or physical. This is just the way that they're allowing either their dominant or subdominant traits to be expressed, but it's not a core indication of what their sexual personality truly is. So in the context of emotional surface traits, we see that the emo is likely to internalize their expressions of emotion. They're not going to be effusive in the way that they express themselves emotionally. Emos mostly prefer to socialize one-on-one or just with a small group of people, and they generally tend to avoid crowds in big, loud places. They tend to be more logical, they tend to be more realistic and a little bit less idealized. In other words, they think things through before they react. They're emotionally intellectualizing before they express their opinion or feelings. Now, the emos are capable of expressing themselves emotionally and affectionately, but it's usually once they've gotten comfortable with the person or the situation, the group, or the environment. In those cases, you might find them start to bloom and open up and actually get quite expressive and communicative. You might think of someone you know who is generally very reserved, maybe a little quiet, but when they get with their core group, when they get with their people and they're talking about a subject that really lights them up, they can become quite animated and excited about it and really want to be there sharing with all of you. Now, an interesting hallmark of the emo with the surface traits is they're going to assume everything is okay, unless you tell them otherwise. If there's no other indication that things are wrong, they're going to assume everything's okay. Emos often enjoy working alone. They often have vocations that are solitary or individual. They even like sports that have to do with fewer people. And they generally don't need pats on the back from other people. They've got their own kind of rhythm of ambition and drive, and they're kind of working to pat their own self on the back. Now, that emo is on the surface going to intellectualize every decision, and they're going to come to a conclusion based on logic and practicality. They're going to weigh their decisions, and often this weighs quite heavily on them because they don't want to get it wrong. They generally prefer to express their affections privately, and they really enjoy those pursuits that stimulate their intellect and their mind. They're really exceptionally good in a crisis. They tend to be able to keep their calm. Emos generally prefer to not dress quite as bold or flashy. They like to have more tailored and tasteful clothes, and they tend to show a little bit less skin overall. The emotional is more likely to take the lead in the initiative with their work and their business, and not so much in the relationship. And at the end of the relationship, they're likely to feel relief. Yes, they feel the same sadness and all those things, but they're relieved that the drama has come to a close. And most importantly, they need their space to be able to express their interests and their own desires, their own pursuits that really bring them a sense of fulfillment. So to sum it all up, if we wanted to kind of create the stereotypical emo, it would be more that kind of bookish person, that kind of nerd, the person who is walking around with the glasses half pushed down and their head in the clouds, thinking of something really interesting and intellectual. So again, a reminder, these are surface traits, the way that an emo is likely to behave, if they're more on the kind of extreme level of the spectrum. Now let's talk about those physicals. What are physical surface traits? Well, they're very much the opposite of what you just heard. They tend to be more expressive in social groups. They tend to prefer larger groups of people and more excitement in their everyday lives. They tend to be excitable emotionally. They come in with their emotions, they feel them, and they let you know what they're feeling. They can react more spontaneously. And for them, they're the ones who are very likely to initiate in the relationship. They're initiating the dinners out, the getting together with other people or groups, or even sex. Those physicals are going to need the reassurance. They are going to ask for your input, your feedback, your connection with family, with children, with their intimate partners, because it reinforces their sense of worth to know that they are an integral part of your life. Physicals tend to enjoy more the team sports, more the physical heavy contact sports. They tend to dress more flashy with more colors, expose more skin. They just feel more comfortable with their bodies, and so they're not shy showing them to you. They make their decisions very quickly, oftentimes hastily, because they're going with that gut instinct, and they're going to tell you what they want and what they think, usually without holding back, being very blunt. They're very comfortable giving physical affection in public, those PDAs, or they're just fine with that, and they generally tend to be a bit more verbose, a bit more talkative. They're the ones that kind of tell you the story with all the details, and you're just sitting there listening going, can you get to the end of it already? They tend to take the initiative in their personal and intimate relationships, oftentimes in their work and business as well, and they take it very personally if you don't receive what they're giving with enthusiasm. One of the hallmarks of a physical surface trait is they want to include their partner in everything. And when I say everything, I mean everything. They are happy to have their intimate partner right there, 24/7, all day long. They think it's wonderful to have 24/7 connection with their partner. They want to share everything. They want to intertwine and become very enmeshed with their significant other. They're often very creative and very romantic, and they can kind of, on the turn of a dime or the drop of a hat, be really spontaneous and do something fun and exciting, sometimes even a bit impulsive and reckless. So take a moment to take into account all of these surface traits. We know that the 4 core traits are how we behave at our core. We're never 100% an emotional or a physical, and these surface traits are really going to help us to see on a surface level how that person is expressing themselves according to this model of behavior. But just know that, again, depending upon who we're in a relationship with, it's going to trigger us to go one way or the other, more or less. Now, there's something else I want you to consider when it comes to surface traits. We can't always assume, just because we see a person who's dressed maybe very provocatively or very sexy and they are exposing a lot of their skin, we can't assume that they're a physical sexual and that they're comfortable with their bodies, because that's a surface trait. Right? They may have just developed the skill, or it's just part of their personality, or it's just a way that they choose to express themselves to get a specific need met in some context. We also can't assume that that bookish looking professor or nerdy person over there isn't a hot freaking animal in the sack. In addition, these surface traits, they parallel to some degree the core traits, but in a very different way. So you can see that the physicals are more comfortable physically being out there with their bodies, with their voice, with their personality, out there in the world, more spontaneous. And they tend to give a little bit less priority to the fundamental security issues of life, because let's just face it, those physicals are fun. They want to have fun. They're all about fun, whether it's physical or sexual or just social. And the emotions are busy expressing themselves in the context of, well, those things that are more emotionally, intellectually stimulating for them. The things that bring them a sense of security. They like to think and process, maybe a little less spontaneous, but they do help keep those physicals feet on the ground. So to wrap it all up, we need both styles of these people. Again, neither one is better or worse. We need spontaneous physicals to remind us that there's more to life than work or, keeping your nose to the grindstone. And we need those emotionals to remind us that there's more to life than just play. We do have to contend with the nuts and bolts of daily living. And so when we can see how these two opposite types can live very compatibly, well, it kind of asks us to reconsider that when we're looking for a partner, what is it that I'm really looking to get met? I'm looking for someone to meet me in a way that is comfortable and familiar, but also exciting and new, and brings out the part of us that maybe we keep a little too subdued from time to time. Now, I know I've been alluding to this, but the next episode, we're going to get into the sex, the sex of how all of this works. Because once you start to truly understand the E and P dynamic, you're going to see the way that it creates cohesion or conflict in a sexual context. I want to thank you again for spending your time with me here at the G-Spot. If you like this episode, please like and subscribe. Put your comments down below. After hearing the surface traits, which one do you think that you seem to move toward? Once again, I'll be putting the link down below for the ENP Sexual Suggestibility Assessment. It's not a direct reflection of who you are as an ERP. It's how you're behaving in the relationship that you are in now, or in reference to your last and previous relationship. As always, it's been wonderful spending time with you here on the G-Spot, and I look forward to seeing you next time.